Cool. All right. Well, Dhruv, you're first up on SMI conformance.
Yeah, sure. So just share my screen. Okay, cool. So the bug which we are currently figuring out was one where we were not able to connect properly to the cluster itself, right? So we were getting a we were not getting the correct endpoint there. We need to connect. So that was the first thing that was fixed. It was fixed in PR1 in Learn Layer 5, where we change the service to load balancer. That was helping us a bit in case of Minikube. Let me just see. Yeah, notebook to load balancer, and few changes in the Meshery adapter library to use the new version of the Kubernetes utility which I have created in Meshery, which would basically give us the correct endpoint which we are facing in that error, right? And
Quick question on that, Dhruv, if I may. That's potentially broadly useful. That is my understanding correct that that utility will, as a new service as Meshery spins up a new service, that you've built in some intelligence to try to identify what type of networking to use to expose that new service that Meshery is creating in um, Kubernetes.
yeah, true. But like in the case of adapters, not Meshery, like
Oh, I
now
see.
if I made the changes over here, now we need to make smaller changes in which the adapters need to use the libraries, the new library which will make use of this particular version, this capability in Meshkit, right? So yeah, basically yes. But we need to update the Meshy adapter library for each of the adapters.
Okay. So when you say it's for adapters, you mean for how adapt, like if a Meshery adapter is running in Kubernetes, how is it, what networking does it use?
I didn't get your question.
When you'd clarified what I'd said, saying, well, not just for services, but for adapters. And so I guess I was just reinforcing you're saying that this utility will help people, or when Meshery spins up, I'd said when Meshery spins up a new service, this utility will help figure out what's the most appropriate networking to assign to that service. And you'd said, yes, but for adapters.
Yeah, so basically adapter uses some functionality like create instance and stuff like that. So those have been upgraded to use the new capability in Meshkit. So now the adapters will be using that once they're upgraded.
Okay, nice. The logic that it does this by is what? Like, how do you ascertain what's the most appropriate networking to use?
Uh, Still, like I still don't
Well,
know.
what did you do? What's the utility that you created?
I haven't created any utility. I just used the new one which was implemented in Meshkit.
Oh, I see. Okay,
That's all.
got it.
It was sitting in the corner.
Okay, all right.
And Abhishek told me it will work, so I didn't dig deep into it. I just used it.
Abhishek,
Uh,
just to digress, like since we've digressed, we may as well get something useful out of it. Abhishek, can you answer that question?
Uh, so this utility, what he is talking about is a different one. I guess he's talking about the KDS client utility. I think is that that's the one, right?
yeah.
Yeah, the client utility is basically nothing but it instantiates a number of Kubernetes-based clients like the Kubernetes client itself, discovery client, and all the different clients that are needed for doing Kubernetes specific operations. So this has nothing to do with
Oh,
networking or service discovery, I guess.
gotcha. Okay, all right, fair enough. Very good.
Yeah, so that was the first thing which was tackled, and second was the percentage which we were getting was not entirely accurate. So now we are getting the accurate percentages. Um, let me just pull up that particular. Yeah, here we go. So the new way of counting the percentage has been implemented, where you'll probably get percent with the accuracy of true, and yeah, that's it. So that's the changes in the SMI conformance tool per se. And now let's go to Meshery Cloud. So in Meshery Cloud, we have created a instance. Uh, Sorry about this. My desktop is a mess currently. Yeah. So, fun fact: Utkarsh and I just collaborated on this. He was working on something, so we did live share together. And yeah, we now have a public endpoint called SMI results or public, in which basically currently it is my ID in which all the results which are gone through my particular ID will be shown over here publicly to anyone, which will basically be used to show official results in our uh, Nearfi website. To give people context, Nearfi.io has a treaty table in which we show the we show the results of the conformance tests which have been involved right over here. So currently the data which is over here is a static data, means we had run test locally and the results which we have gotten were added over here. But the thing is, now we have a particular endpoint, and whenever a new test is invoked, and the latest changes will now be added over here. Now the functionality in the website is yet to be implemented, but the endpoint is now up and working. Now the thing which we have to decide is which particular ID should be used for doing this kind of stuff. For now, I have hard coded it to my ID itself, but in future, most probably it will be a ID of Meshery or this particular service mesh providers. And yeah, so on and so forth.
Nice. Yeah. And Dhruv, on that, one of the more there's a couple of ways that this could be done. And one of the more likely ways is that the Meshery provider continues to be used, but that individual one account per service mesh is identified as being authoritative for that service mesh's status, and that one, two, three, four, five accounts would be statically configured here, or well, here or in the endpoint
Yeah,
as okay,
in the Meshy cloud itself. Yeah,
right.
that should be the case finally. But till we get the endpoints, I think we can, while they are not there, we can have a
Yep.
local network, something like that.
Sounds good. Yeah, using yours sounds good.
For now, using my sounds good, like to at least have a link between the website and the backend to work on that.
Nice.
Later on, as in on we get the credentials, we can add both
Perfect.
user IDs whose data would be public, basically. So I had run it locally uh, in a new. So this was a test which I ran before the meeting ran, which was before this meeting, and yeah, as you can see those results. It is not formatted for that. I need to go out of incognito.
Sure. And just to clarify, are we still capturing the mm, the different capabilities like full, partial, and none?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. So if I have Meshery running, Yeah, so this was a test, and yeah, we are still seeing the capability whether it is half or not and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
They failed at step 4, step 3, and how many total steps were there.
So certainly we expect that that in like open service mesh, one of the first ones to potentially use this, that when they have a failure, they're going to be curious as to why they failed and how they can get it to 100%.
Hmm.
What do we tell them in this case?
We tell them that see, you failed at the step 4 of install. So like go to the layer file repo over here, and in SMI conformance, we have particular test laid out accordingly. So here we are in traffic access 4. So here is where you are not working properly. And if you want to dig more, you can check out our dog in which we have defined in better detail what each particular test does. And still, if they want to dig down, then we can point them to the learn layer 5 repo where the tests are generated.
And then, yeah, if they want to see one of the things about this is that they may well understand that, okay, that's the test, that's that test. Okay, I get it. But I thought that we had this taken care of, whatever that is. And they'll say, well, so why isn't it working then? Because I thought we had that. So where's
Mhm.
the debug log, or like where's the what specifically is failing?
So basically, you want a more detailed version of why this failing. Like we aren't printing it over here, but I remember that we are still getting it somewhere. So if you want to change the UI to include that message, that failure message too, we can do that.
Nice. Yeah, it'd be good just to at least have that.
And and anyways, like we need to do a rework in the learn layer 5 repo to like change, get away from kudo as fast as possible. Like even the mm, percentage pass which I need to get, like kudo doesn't even give us the step in which it failed. I had to uh, get it from the reason itself, like it failed at step 4, stuff like that.
Gotcha. Yep. Yeah, I agree. Although we will not do that unless we've gotten some return on investment here. Today we don't have any.
Yeah,
And
so basically this all changes were there to push SMI on the face, I guess we can say.
yeah, like the reason it should have there should be a hyperlink. Like we need to be able to tell people what failed. Like, yeah, failure in that step, that's excellent. That's beautiful. And that's the right thing to show in a concise way here. But for them to go fix it, and for them to like, it's okay if the answer is, well, hey, you need to go ahead and go look at the logs in the Learn Layer 5 app, and or wherever those logs are. If we've yet to expose them here, that's okay. But you got to anticipate that if anyone really cares about this, that they're going to want to try to fix it, understand what's going on. And so today, I understand. I'm still confused as to what's that answer. Where do they go to look at the debug?
Where do they go to debug? So like currently where they could go is they could go to the site and the log and see what the test is. And if they really want to debug, they can check their local cluster in which the SMI test is running, and they can see all the logs which they want.
Nice. So if they let it run and come back, will the app still be there? Will they be able to look at the logs?
Mm, Actually, no. Once the test is completed, we delete the app altogether. So maybe we can change it so that the app stays. I don't know.
Yeah, not or just like, hey, what we need to do is capture the error as it fails, and then expose it here in the UI. It should be the case that we'll understand that it failed in a particular step, and we will whatever details are present at the time, we
So,
will have.
like, let me ask you this: do you want the log for all the tests which were ran, or like log for the place where it was failing?
Ideally the second, but we don't need, to your point about like getting off of Kudo, we don't, or yeah, Cuddle, we don't need to it can be the former. It can just be like, here's the log. You're intelligent. Whoever is working on this, they are absolutely intelligent enough to like, step through the whole stack trace, so to speak, the whole log, and figure it. And that's fine. And it's not the best experience, and that's fine, because that's entirely appropriate. That you wouldn't want to invest so much more into this. It's just like enough to get us by, so that we can then have convinced everyone this is real. We in fact are. We've been talking about this for a year and a half, since we opened the issue. Not with you, Drew, but just but it's serious. We were serious. We are serious. This works. This is here. You're enabled to do it. Yeah, there's gonna be some rough edges and things. And yeah, that was a first cut, and that architecture, Drew is identifying as not great. And we've actually rewritten that stuff. We've already rewritten it once, but we do need to rewrite it a second time, and it'll be really good the second time. And in order to guarantee that it'll be worth it, we need to have um, more than one of those teams beating on our door saying, "Hey, we need this. Our customers are asking us, are we compliant?" Also, that's pie in our face when you're saying it's only 50%, and we're the ones that made this spec. And so they're, yeah. And it's also okay if it's like, hey, look, it's gonna be really hard to get that log exposed here, even just the entire log. Like here, it's okay if the answer is, yeah, we know that there's an open issue. What you can't, no, you can't just let it run and come back. That's the tool isn't that great right now. Here's what you've got to do or here's something else that you can do to persist those logs. So make sure that you've installed FluentD on your cluster, that you're persisting the logs off elsewhere, so that when it dies, you can come back and look. Like, what just need some answers and some to have looked like we've done our diligence to say, this is how the tool works. This is how you sign up. Hey, I work on OSM. How do I get OSM's? How do I register and get OSM? How should I use this in our pipeline? And how do I schedule this? So I grab the token. Then how long does that token last for me to then send my results? Or do I even need a token? Or like, so there's a lot of like, rough edges that we need to tie off, so that they can really come use this. Because when we don't want to go tell them, here, use this, and then they ask us the first question like, oh, why did it fail? And you're like, well, geez, I don't know. Let me think about that. I guess we've got some enhancements to do, and we haven't even written that down, or so whatever that answer is, please go create an issue and identify like what they can do today, what you think we should do short term, and then long term, don't identify what to do, because that's a rewrite.
Okay.
This is good, by the way. None of the stuff that you've done well. None of the things that I just said are in like. Please don't interpret those negatively. You're doing well. There's a lot to consider here. Ton of moving parts. It's it's a whole function. It's something that exercises all of what a specification is against 8 different surface, 5 different surface meshes. It's a ton, and it captures them, and like, it's a lot to have considered. So it looks really good. The UI here looks really good. Then yeah, those hopefully people bang on our door about those next couple of things. I'm like, hey, why am I failing? I think that this is important. How do I fix that? Also, I've begun to run this, and I've got results that I want to go fix. We're working on fixing those. I'm ready for my results to be published. How do I work with you to make sure that my results are published?
Okay.
So is this all right? Cool. So to recap, the status is we still have static info on the website. We're close. You've got an endpoint that's been updated to that hasn't been merged yet, but it's been updated to show
Yeah.
the data. What else hasn't been merged in terms of what you're showing?
Okay, so the update one would be the Nearify, the new conformance test app, like the Docker image, has been published and updated. The adapter library is still yet to be merged. it is working all fine. It is up for review, and we need to update the once the adapter library is updated. We need to update each of the adapters to use the new adapter library. And in in case of Meshery Cloud, the things, yeah, probably the things are done, or only the PR which we have is yet to be merged
Okay. Nice. All right.
for this endpoint to be invoked. And other than that, mm, currently the system is whenever we want a new a mesh provider to have his credentials saved so that it could be viewed publicly, we need to invoke one more PR to change that manually.
That makes sense. That would be like, oh, a one-time thing, 8 different times. But like, yeah,
Yeah.
very good. According to my watch, we have 14 and a half hours before this turns into a pumpkin, um, without having those items that you just mentioned completed. So I think it's feasible, right? I think you can get those merged today, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. I'm
Oh,
pumped.
okay.
Sorry, everyone else. I forgot to ask for feedback from others, but Drew's been hot on the trail here. So, Drew, one other item as you go to wrap it up is please do test from a user's perspective. So, because I assume that you've compiled Meshery locally and aren't running
Yes, I
Meshery.
have compiled it locally.
Okay.
This is
And
a
so,
very bad habit of developers working. Whenever I want to run Meshery, I run it locally.
yeah, yeah,
I don't use the command line.
yep. Yeah. There shouldn't be any difference, but yeah, there sometimes it gets you.
Yeah, we need to change that. Most probably working on that slowly, I guess.
Sure. Um, one, by the way, for everyone on the call, one of the things that we don't do, and we don't do it primarily because we would run out of space immediately, but on when we're building Meshery on GitHub, every time that one of your PRs is merged, um, there is a new edge release that's made. And so you can subscribe to the edge channel, the edge release channel, and test your changes post merge, 10 15 minutes or so after it's been merged. But before it's been merged, if you're a reviewer of a PR, or if you, as the individual that has made the changes and has opened a PR, that there's an intermediate build that happens when a PR is opened. The artifacts, though, from that build, like when Meshery CTL is built as there's an open PR, or when any of the images are built on the open PR, those build artifacts are lost. Like they're not persisted. And so this is a topic to bring up in the CI meeting. Anyway, it's possible to persist those and make those available to help facilitate like user testing, you know. So we'll have to bring that up in the Thursday call. Oh, Drew, yeah, one of the items there is like, hey, what is the procedure by which I schedule my SMI conformance tests? If I'm going to use cron separately, how do I, you know?
So that functionality is not been worked yet, where we invoke a test using, like we schedule a test. If that's,
Right.
or I'm not aware of it. It
Oh
has
yeah.
been in the background because I remember Anirudh was looking into it, but I didn't get any reply back of what was going
Oh,
on.
nice. Cool. Yep. You're on it. Or then you're aware of it, I guess. Yep, it's what is it? Meshery CTL, Meshery CTL EXP, in an experimental mesh, validate, and then who knows if it works from there. One of the issues, I shouldn't say who knows if it works from there. That's no, I don't mean to say that with respect to Anirudh. I mean, it was done a long time ago and he did it quickly. And so a lot has changed. One of the issues, if you will, is, well, the token path that's listed as a, well, one of the issues is that we don't see usage, or like we don't see an example anyway. This token path, path to the token for authenticating to Meshery API. Okay. But what if I want to schedule this in my CI system? How long lived is this token? That's not.
Okay, we have the questions. When I will look into it. I will see through. Like I will.
Actually, this the lifetime of the token would depend upon the provider, so they can set it to 1 hour, 30 hour.
Yep. Yeah. And Driv is not fair. It's great, Driv. If you drill in here, that's excellent. But yeah, it's not a fair question to aim directly at you like that. Yeah. Dhruv, as you converse with Utkarsh, or Utkarsh, if anyone's able to quickly look that up from the Meshery provider, I'd be curious as to what that's currently set to. Or Dhruv, or I shouldn't say or, but, and also as individual service mesh teams come to register their account and say, hey, this is the account that I want to use in the Meshery provider to send in our official results. That, part of that hard coding of their, that registration process might also be, and Utkarsh, if you give this some consideration, what might also be, if we're able to generate a very long-lived token for that account, so that they
Right,
can.
right now, the access token is for 10 hours and the refresh token for 1,000 hours in Meshery Club.
Okay. So, okay. Is it possible to make one-off exceptions for specific accounts?
Actually, that's something like we'll have to see if Hydro offers that or not. Yeah.
Wait. What did you, Utkarsh, did you just say, I don't know? Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me,
I,
wait, I think we have, I'm going to take a note here. What is today? The 17th, March 17th, 2021. Utkarsh says, I don't know, for the first time. Okay, I just want to get that on paper. All right. Okay, anyway, Drew, thank you, man. I thank Drew. You hit the mark, man. You had a 2-week deadline, and you're hitting it. And you got sick for half of a week in there, and you still did it, and you still delivered some stuff on MeshMap. It's got to feel good. You're getting it done. It's nice. Well, oh, hey, Utkarsh, I think you're up next on the list.
should I share the screen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, please.
It's visible. The screen is visible, right?
Yes. Yep, we're in Slack at the moment.
Oh, I was sharing the docs.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
I didn't quite catch it, but I thought there's something in there about how much of a jerk Lee is. Something I couldn't quite get it.
you know,
It was somewhere.
okay, so I hope now Chrome is visible. Um,
Yeah, it is totally. Oh, oof, yeah, that's
this
looking
is
good.
this change, like a few things have changed from the last time that we last time I demoed it. So the calendar is moved down. We have cards above. You can go and manage your profiles, and you get to see the total results, the total test results that are under this profile. You can turn it around by clicking on the card. That's confusing. You can click on the details thing. It will turn around. You can click on the view results. Shadows are gone. Kind of weird. And you can click on the graph. You can now read it properly. I hope.
Yeah, yeah.
So these are the changes in here. And so this is the same old form, except that now you get that now it's completely blocked while you're running tests. You get the results. Table view has, yeah, now instead of getting old plain three like silent kind of button, you get different buttons for each operation. One is for edit, one is for delete. I'm not deleting it right now, and one is for executing the test right from the table. And you can expand this thing and check all of the results. So, and now the correct basically option would be highlighted, which was not happening earlier for reasons I know. But yeah. And this is the weekly view, I mean daily view of the tests that we've run, because all of them couldn't have been shown here because there were like 6 tests. So you can click on this to the test that would run in one single day at what time, and you can click run test, and you get your plain old kind of interface. So now you don't actually have to manually create a profile in case you just want to run it off test. You can do the old things. We will create, although we will create a profile for you, so that in case you are like you ran a uh, basically you may have run a test now, uh, and now you may want to save all of its information. So something like. So we found a test, but it didn't. I think I didn't name the profile. I think we go here. This is the profile. You can see the requested is also that you save, and now you may want to save the profile because it's nice. Uh, and you can save it. So any feedback? Although this is the third iteration, but still, anyway, I'm asking.
A third time could be a charm. Um, um, who's confused by this? By the way, the one of the larger feature areas, or one of the more useful and functional feature areas for end users in Meshery, is the performance management, and this update changes the whole changes it. It's a it's an entirely, well, almost an entirely different experience. So I know all of you have run a performance test before. This is one of those things that it'd be good for each of you to step through to make sure that it logically sits cleanly in your mind. You know, from a user's perspective of just um, while you're all thinking about that, Utkarsh, there's a couple of small iterative items that so, a number of which you might be aware of. The more one of the ones that's a little bit harder and it takes a while to get to. A lot of times it's just, especially if you don't have full mock-ups that show all of what would ideally be there. Something that takes a little while is like, how we have results here, we have results and updated on. That's the right info. That's great information to show someone. Is they have this test profile A. How many test results? How many times have they run it? Basically, like how many results do they have for this particular profile? One. Great. Well, when was the last time they ran? When was the last time they updated this profile? They reconfigured the profile. Then that was the last time. Great. And they can. By the way, if you click the card or click on details, do you get the same? Okay, got it. One thing it takes a little time. It takes is the data that we're showing. It's like the right data. It's good data. The formatting of it, along with how to present it in a way in which not a lot of white space is, or feel that there is white space, but it doesn't feel wasted. And by that I mean, like, if you go to view test results, at the top of the this is white space makes things feel clean, but on the upper right hand side, like about 1/3 of what we're showing is not used, and that's in part because there's a hide test results button that takes up this much height, and then consequently uses up that much space going off to the right. And the same thing for so one thing, so if you were to take that button and move it up in line with the details, well, great, that would save some white space, but it would also be a little harder for users to follow, because the nice thing about what you've done is that you've left the button in the same location. So if you click hide test results and then you get view test results, like, it's right, the user feels pretty good because things didn't, if you click it again, there's a small animation, things get pushed out of the way, it opens up, the button stays where it is, it doesn't jump on them and go somewhere else and go, run off somewhere. It doesn't elope with anyway. So it feels good to use. It's just anyway, some comments about, so there's white space there. There's another area that has some white space. It's in the graph where you're showing the details. So this one may not have your latest. Does this have your latest? Yeah, it does have your latest update. So performance graph. Yeah, those are awesome details, and they are so incredibly hard to read and dissect and understand what the heck those things mean. And it's not your fault, or this isn't your fault. This has been here from the start. But those are awesome. Response time histogram at max target QPS. What the hell is a QPS? Oh, queries per second. Okay. One connection for, okay. In some respects, like, this is great because what it's doing is it's repeating back to you, here was your configuration, here's what you asked me to do, and here's what actually happened. Oh, you asked me to run one connection for 3 seconds, and I actually ran it for 3 seconds. And there were no errors, in the responses. All the responses came back as 200s. And by the way, this is how fast they came back on average, and it breaks down the statistics. So one way, just like what we were doing with the show hide details button, where you're leaving it in the same place, and it's comforting to the user because it's not jarring. It's not like they click the button and then the button goes away and something else comes in. That if someone is filling in the form and configuring the profile, well, if we're going to show back to them, here's what you configured and here was the actual, we might want to show it back to them in a similar format as to how they configured it. So, like, again, here's the test profile. Here's the test profile configuration format, that form, these values are grayed out. The ones that you configured, here were the actuals for the test. Some of the like the name of the test, it's right there at the top. The endpoint that they pointed at, the time stamp of the thing, like it becomes a lot more readable because the user has already learned what, you know. So thought. Anyway, this is only better than what was there before. Or, I mean, this is only a step forward. What was there before and was and continues to be a brain tease to figure out. Anyway, does anyone else have feedback for Utkarsh before we move to Hussein? So I realize now that we're about 10 minutes left. It's beautiful. I love the use of the colors here. Austin, if you have some information architecture ideas about, you know, how to use up that white space, how to convey some of this. One thing that I think would be neat to see is that results 1 or 3 or as a big number, and I mean to say big number in the performance charting sense that like almost the entire card has a big fat 3 on it, like, or, and so yeah, I wonder what would happen if the updated on was reduced in font size by 1 to 2 notches, put in light gray, italicized, shoved into the lower left-hand corner, with the results, the number itself being quite large and in bold, and actually the card height being increased based on the fact that that number would be of about 28 or 32 font, and that underneath the number or off to the right-hand side of the number, it would say you have big fat 3 and then results, a label in the middle of, like if you've got the 3 this tall, in the middle of that 3 off to the right-hand side, it would say results. It would say results. Aren't these mock-ups good enough for you? We just do the hand signals and then
okay. This one was good enough, but I couldn't. I mean, I'm yet not clear with.
Yeah, no, it's not bad. Yeah, it needs to be written down. This is great, man. You did a great job. It needs to be written down so it's clear, or mocked up so it's clear. This is helpful getting at the. So right now it looks like one thing that is helpful about this type of info, like the Kubernetes cluster and the nodes, for it to be presented in a tabular format, really much more legible. Like, and so it might be that like, hey, that data is beneath. We'll mock this up, but that data would be beneath the performance chart. It would be underlying and like, hey, this was the performance in context of this system. And then, yeah, here was your profile config, again, sort of maybe shown back to you in the same way in which you configured it. So anyway, thanks for
One suggestion, can we give, instead of CPU memory, can we have small icons if it is possible?
This thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can actually. One thing that I'm yet to figure out is, if I don't know if anyone noticed or not, in previous graph, this information was missing, but in this one it has, and it's not front end, which is skipping some information. Either it's there in the result or it's not, and I still have to look into why it's in some results and why it's not in some results. I've noticed that it usually happens when you run a first result. It's not in first result, and but in when you run subsequent results, this information starts coming up. So it's something that may be missing in the backend, but definitely so yeah. If we get this, then the front end can definitely convert this into articles, some fancy stuff. If it gets it.
nice. Alrighty. Well, Hussein, now that you're talking, let's talk about your some of the work that you're doing.
Yes, Lee. Uh,
Um, uh, which could be about the config stuff, or yeah, your thoughts about how we might, how some of that might transition into Golang, and how some of that might be replicated into Meshery server, and hangups that you might run into.
yeah, actually, I'm still looking into the config code to be modified, I mean, to be ported to Meshkit. So one issue what I am stuck with is that there are some APIs which use the config of type REST, and the other thing uses API dot config. So both of them have this context info, auth info, all this. That's the common thing. So I'm looking into how can we basically make use of this info to achieve what we want to achieve for GKE, because GKE is the config which is bit complicated. Like it has many steps, and I had a word with Michael as well. So he has suggested that few things could be done by uh, passing this SA account name or such things as input parameters. So I'm also I need to explore that as well. So I have not got a chance to work on it yet. Hopefully this week I'll put some effort there. And the other thing I'm looking into is the Meshery bash script related changes. There was one recent one about uh, uh, the script failing with multiple errors, which were not really intuitive to the user. So one change that I had was to silently overwrite whenever we unzip. And another thing is about install path. So we can give environment variable, and see, basically what is happening is the current user does not have sudo permissions, or he is not uh, having access to user local bin. So that is where the issue was. So in such cases, if they choose to run Meshery in their home directory, we should be able to give them permission to install it there, so that the Meshery installation won't fail. So this was the recent thing. And before that, I also had worked on the silent flag. Basically, if you want to silently start Docker, if it is not running already, so that was added to system start command. uh, yeah, the other thing I have on my plate is about the platform flag, which got introduced to all the Meshery CTL system commands, like start, uh, stop, reset, which Navendu has worked on. So I am actually thinking how to do this from the bootstrap time, which is Meshery uh, script. So if we have a cube config file already, maybe we could uh, read, I mean, detect the presence of it, and uh, start Meshery with platform Kubernetes maybe. Otherwise, how to identify what is the user's platform without asking the user, right? Asking the user is pretty straightforward. They might have Docker desktop as well as Kubernetes also. What is your preference is something which we can ask the user, or we can uh, decide it for ourselves. So this is something I have to uh, decide and code. Yeah.
We need to talk more often. This is that's good. My goodness, there was a lot in your brain. So, um, okay, we got a couple of minutes. So hopefully, a couple of comments will help you move forward. Yeah, you're right that we do want to fanatically focus on time to value, on like, hey, I ran a command to install this thing, and oh my goodness, it's showing me statistics on my pre-existing service mesh. Like it did the whole, I just ran the bash script, and all of a sudden some stuff downloaded, some stuff started to run. My browser came up. I clicked to log in, and now I see my cluster, and I see the fact that I already had Istio, and then there's a Grafana that's already connected, and then I'm seeing statistics, and like, oh wow, awesome. If we get it right, that'll actually happen. And like, we've put a lot of effort. So anyway, your efforts here don't go to waste. Like people have that moment, and it's those things, those delightful little moments that have people turning around saying, hey, have you seen this tool? You should, or people turning around saying, what tool you're using? That's pretty cool. It is, well, here's the thought. Like if so two things, a bunch of things. One, the silent installer and some of the environment variables that we have in the bash script, fantastic. We need to open up an issue to make sure that we've got that documented on the docs.
Yes. Yeah, I was about to say that. Yes, about this new environment variable. Yes. Yeah.
And then for the auto identifying what's the most appropriate platform for Docker or Kubernetes is like, well, one of the approaches can be um, today we're looking to see if there's a Docker service available. Tomorrow we can be looking to see if there's a Kubernetes. We look for a Kubernetes config, but also to attempt to connect to it and ping it. Like it might become somewhat apparent that what the right answer is if Meshery, if the bash script is installing Meshery, and maybe isn't the bash script that has this logic, probably not, but it's Meshery CTL itself, as the system start runs for the first time, that as it in the process of creating that first context in the config.yaml, that it would take a look around the environment. If there's no no Docker service available, but there is a kube config, maybe just assume that it's going to be Kubernetes and create that first config with the platform type of Kubernetes, and sort of go from there. If the Docker service is available, we might be able to get 50% of this automated-ish, or some certain percentage, but then yeah, the other half the time, or the default switch case, if you will, the catch-all is, okay, fine, just ask them, did you want to run this in cluster, out of cluster, but we might be able to get
Yeah, Navendu also had a suggestion that we could store this preference, whether it is Kubernetes platform or Docker platform, and store it in a file, so that whenever they try to start Meshery again, so we can look at that variable, and then we need not ask this platform flag, right? That need not be given whenever we use Meshery CTL system start again.
You mean like as their
Yeah.
default preference for
Yes.
when?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's possible. Yeah, I mean
Correct.
it, it is. Yeah, that's possible. 'Cause, yeah, right now we're internalizing that default assumption that it would be one platform versus the next. If we include logic that, yeah, I that's a good. I think that we might find it's 6,001, half dozen, or whatever. It's potato in terms of like um, today a user is, if for any given command they are able to specify a global there's a global flag for config, I believe, to specify like a different anyway it might like I don't know, this might be a premature optimization, like getting user feedback
Mm.
on because today the quick of it is that the user, in a very human readable way can go in and switch out their platform for a given deployment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the user would also be reminded of what they are doing with, right, going forward whenever they switch.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, these are good. Yeah, we
Yeah.
by the way, we if we don't have a, we might want to, we should get some of these thoughts on paper. I think like it, or it'll help make it clear what's I don't know if Navendu pointed you to a design spec or if he had suggested to put some of those thoughts into the Meshery, see this main doc or not. But putting some of those thoughts into here might help
Okay.
about
Sure.
some of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Hussein, you might have said this before. Hey, for people who are really going to use Meshery, really going to use it, they're going to use it. They're most likely going to run Meshery in Kubernetes. Like most of the time, they're going to deploy Meshery in Kubernetes. And it's actually easier for us when they do, because we avoid some networking issues. We get access to the cluster easier. On your first set of challenges around identifying the type of Kubernetes, the system config, there's got to be some open source scripts or utilities that help identify the type of cluster. I think in part that's what you were saying with respect to like the info, getting cluster info and then dissecting what the distro name is or like what the platform name is. But even from the CNCF, like um, I should be able to help get you in contact with people that can like readily point us to utilities that do that.
Yeah. So basically, from the Meshery bash script point of view, we have to decide the preference for the users, right? Like we need to give preference to either Kubernetes first and then we look for Docker next. So this decision is with us basically, right? Depending upon what would be the mostly deployed thing, right? So even from the config point of view, if you see in EKS as well as AKS and GKE, it's all Kubernetes clusters, right? So, uh,
Yep,
yeah,
you're right. That like
yeah,
you're right that the default preference for Docker as the platform, that basically after you're done, and Navendu and you and Anish and Ayush and folks are done with pervasive support for Kubernetes as a platform, that we should probably just switch the catch-all use case or the default to Kubernetes as like to in-cluster deployments, and stop causing ourselves pain with NAT networking and bridge networking and other you know, and
Mhm.
that, yeah, it can be in the bash script. It could be that I would encourage us to write as little into the bash script as possible, because we'll get more reuse out of logic that's written into both Meshery CTL and Meshery server. Both Meshery CTL and Meshery server would identify, like, in some respects, you'd want for Meshery CTL to, or you want to stand up Meshery server as quick as possible, have it take a look at the, have it potentially perform, yeah, yeah, I mean, Meshery CTL needs to identify what platform, so that Meshery server can be deployed on that platform. And then, you know, between the two of them, they would hopefully share some logic, maybe in Meshkit, that um, identifies cluster type, but also makes it a little easy to potentially switch between platforms. Hussein, when we get to, we need to create a design spec on the concept of environments. And environments can be a Kubernetes based or a Docker based, and having a control and having a construct called an object called environments, I think will potentially really help us and help the user navigate this post install. Like, even once they've got Meshery up, to be able to shift it in cluster, out of cluster, or to, like, because they can get Meshery. Yeah. Never mind. I was going to say they could get Meshery up and then reconfigure part of their Kubernetes connection, but really
Mhm.
that's not so much true. Like, it's mostly in Meshery CTL where we need to figure out how to actually connect to Kubernetes to be able to deploy Meshery into that Kubernetes environment. Yeah.
Mhm.
Some of this, and we can
Mhm.
some of this we can put back on the user too. Like, you know, like, we do have those external dependencies that they need to, like, if we're making it to the, I know we're at totally over time, but if they can make it to the point where Meshery CTL is simply saying to them, oh, it looks like we're not able to talk to Kubernetes, or it looks like you want to use Kubernetes, but we can't talk to it, or it looks like it's a mini cube and we can't talk to, or what, however far we can get to just prompt them to say, oh, you probably don't have certificate data in your kube config. That will just help eliminate stumbling blocks. Or, like, to suggest to them, like, oh, did you need to run Meshery CTL system config for your specific type of Kubernetes environment that we can't figure out? You've got to, you know, like,
Hmm.
yeah, you do. That's great.
Things missing.
I don't have immediate answers for some of the hard things that you're taking on. Nice. All right. Anything else on that, Hussein?
Uh, yeah, there was the IstioCon issue, for which Utkarsh has taken a look, and it's importing of GCP related libraries, which would solve the issue. So
Actually, I could run uh,
yeah.
Meshery on GCP and deployed SD also. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't smooth. So there are a few things that I mean, I made changes locally so that the process can become smooth. The only thing that would be a bit not difficult, a bit notorious in some sense, is that they provide access. GCP offers access tokens, and I like today's roof told me that DigitalOcean also does the same. So they provide access tokens for authentication, and that access token can be renewed, can be renewed using Google Cloud, and that is something that can be automated, and that is automated using Client Go. But the thing is that we don't actually install G Cloud SDK on the system while Meshery gets installed. So that is something that either we automate or else. So the process automated. If that token has expired, then the plugin would come into play, and it will try to renew the token using the binary, which has been specified in the kube config. But as that binary doesn't exist, so it will start throwing error that, hey, your token has expired and I cannot access this binary to refresh the token. Other than that, GCP, Meshery run fine on GCP. I deployed SQN as well as Prometheus and Grafana also. It was working fine.
Does that mean that
So, so basically, in the Istio lab, uh, the tokens would have expired, right? That could be the root cause, right?
No, actually, there were a lot of things that I mean. I didn't specify other issues. So one of the issue, so today Drew was working on the shade art library. So I have, I told him that there is a fix. So there was one issue in the shade art library also, which was preventing. Uh, so basically, it was kind of giving a false error. So that was also one of the issues. So there were a few issues which we can fix really easily. One of them has would be fixed once through PRs is merged, and a few are there. Like I mentioned earlier, I and Sina actually talked about importing a library that is a Go client Go. I don't remember the name. It's plugins. Once we import them, then basically it has authentication plugins and it can authenticate automatically with the Kubernetes provider. So that is second barrier. We just have to import it. Again, not difficult. This G Cloud SDK was the only thing which was a bit not a barrier, but it was something that we are not doing, and it would be it's worth discussing. That is why I didn't mention. So basically there were quite a few issues with that.
Okay. I think we can call it a day.
Yeah.
We have a lot of action items. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Utkarsh, we should poke the venue to make sure that we're getting this into a design spec, into the right design spec, getting it on paper. Oh, God, I so desperately want to keep talking about this. well, we'll catch up more in chat and in a design spec. That's good. Abhishek got off the hook without having to show a Meshery operator today. So next time. Very nice. Nice to talk to you, everyone. See you next time.
Yep. Bye, people.
Yes. Bye,
But
everyone. Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi guys, bye.